Hey everyone, Abdul here, and today I'm going to be sharing my project on the social construction of gender. This topic sits at the heart of many things we've explored this semester. Gender is not about just biology, it's about identity, behavior, power, and expectations. In this short presentation today, I'm going to unpack how gender is made through society, how it's taught to us, how it's enforced, and how it impacts real lives. I'll be drawing from course materials like our textbook, as well as foundational sociologists and recent research as well. So let's jump right into it. My first slide, what is gender? First, I think it's important we define what we mean by gender. Unlike sex, which has biological characteristics, gender is related to roles, behaviors, and identities. So more of a deep dive, sex refers to biological traits like chromosomes and anatomy. Gender, however, is social. It's how society expects people to act, dress, and exist based on those given biological traits. Now, in our textbook, it explains that we're taught to see the world through the gender binary, a system that says there are only two genders, male and female. This binary assumes they're opposite and natural, but sociology shows that this belief is a learned belief. Think of how children are taught early about blue is for boys and pink is for girls. These aren't biological facts. They're cultural scripts, stereotypes that are reinforced every day as we grow up. They shape our behavior and they limit our expression. I was wondering, when did you realize what it meant to be a boy or a girl? And who taught you? Gender as a social construct. So, what does it mean to say that gender is socially constructed? It means that gender isn't hardwired, it's made and reinforced by society, or aka, it is not rooted in biology. Judith Lorber described gender as a social institution, something that organizes people's lives just like law or religion. Our textbook also uses a metaphor of gender binary glasses, a lens we all wear that filters how we see the world. Through these glasses, jobs like nursing become women's work, while engineering is seen as a job for men, or even other just STEM fields in general. And I think it's important to realize our subconscious biases that we develop as we grow and experience life day through day. Even personality traits like assertiveness or empathy get assigned to specific genders. But in other times or cultures, you might see those same traits flipped, and that's the power of social construction. So I think, it's important we keep these in mind as we go through our day by day and just recognize the things that we think of or expect in relation to what we've been taught as children. Next, learning gender through socialization. We don't wake up knowing how to gender. We're taught it. From birth, socialization agents like family, media, religion, and school teach us gender norms. We learn through this course that kids are often the starters of policing gender norms because that's what they're taught, like teasing for boys, for crying, just as an example. Or, toys. In toy aisles, they're split up into pink dolls and blue trucks. Cartoons give boys actions and girls appearances. These messages tell us what's right for our gender and often punish us for going outside the lines. And this socialization just continues to adulthood, and it's just a cycle with, you know, those people's children and their children's children, and it just keeps going. So, what were you encouraged to do as a child that fit gender expectations? Just think about it. Next, performing gender. We don't just learn gender, we also perform it. In a study done by Weston Zimmerman, they call this doing gender. It's the way we carry ourselves, how we speak, what we wear, and how we interact. It's all shaped by expectations. The textbook pointed out that gender performance isn't always conscious. We don't think, today I'm going to act like a man, but you might speak more firmly in meetings or more stern. or choose clothes that match your identity because of expectations, gendered expectations. Failing to perform it correctly, and you'll face what sociologists will define as gender policing, being judged, corrected, or even excluded if you don't participate. Another example is men shaking each other's hands, women's crossing their legs. These are socially learned performances, and they're things we do daily. Um, a question I have, what's one small way you perform your gender every day without even thinking about it? Because there are so many things, like the things I've talked about today. Speaking more stern as a man, shaking hands, these are things that I'm subconsciously performing for my gender. Next, gender across time and cultures. Now, here's the clearest proof that gender is constructed. It changes. In the US, pink was once a boy's color. High heels were originally worn by European aristocrat men. In Samoa, the Fa'afafine are recognized as a third gender. In indigenous North American cultures, two-spirit identities have existed for centuries. Or in Scotland, something that's, I think, very well known, the kilts, traditionally worn by men, are like skirts, and it's very normal and common there. Um, No, cross-cultural variation proves that gender is not fixed. Like I was saying, pink was considered a strong color suited for boys until we shifted norms after World War II. And it shows that these norms are socially created, not biologically ingrained within us. And in the textbook, we talk about how if gender was purely biological, we see the same norms across the world, but we don't. And that tells us that gender isn't universal, but it's actually shaped by culture, time, and I think most importantly, power. So what happens when you break the rules? What happens when you don't fit? That leads to some backlash. For instance, a boy wearing a dress or a woman refusing to be makeup, they may seem as culturally unintelligible, meaning society struggles to categorize them. They're not being easily understood or accepted because they don't fit into the dominant culture of what they should behave like, how they should identify themselves, or their way of life. People who are non-binary, trans, or gender non-conforming often face judgment, not because they're doing harm, but because they're challenging the binary system. So society doesn't know how to categorize people outside of the binary, so it resists them. Even legal systems struggle to adapt. While some states now offer non-binary options on IDs, many forms still force you to choose male or female. This shows how deeply binary thinking is built into institutions. Now imagine being constantly told how it would feel to be told your identity is confusing or just wrong. And think about how that would affect your everyday life. The consequences of gender construction are pretty, vast and wide. Gender norms shape our inequality. Allyship is centered on actions taken by individuals who belong to an advantaged group. For example, the women's civil rights movement. It was very important for men to participate and help women gain their rights. And that's like a great example of allyship. They're not just ideas, generals have real consequences. For example, in the US, women still earn about 82 cents for every dollar. Men are under pressure to suppress emotions, which contributes to high suicide rates. And that leads us into hegemonic masculinity and femininity. Men are expected to never cry, always want to be the boss, and think he has to protect and provide. So he's a real man, so he's real masculine. While for femininity, it's accepted and idolized of being, you know, being being a certain way. You're expected to look pretty, be kind and gentle, and put others' needs before your own, while being nurturing in these other things that are put upon you. Now, occupational segregation, caregiving penalties, and double standards in leadership all stem from how we construct and enforce gender roles. Now, take a moment to reflect. Where have you seen gender expectations shape your opportunities or even relationships? I think we've all experienced different ways on how we're expected to act or proceed, you know. And so I think it's important to reflect how we were taught to be our gender. Have you ever broken a gender rule? What was people's reactions? And then what expectations have you unlearned about your gender? As a man, have, I've unlearned to not suppress my emotions as much, to, make sure I'm able to be vulnerable and emotionally intelligent within myself and to understand my feelings. And I think it's important to make sure we don't judge someone else for not following the rules and, support one another. Now, it's always also important to realize or think about how might someone from a different background, race, culture, or sexuality answer these questions differently. Because expectations here in America, where I'm from, is very different than expectations worldwide, I'm sure. And so everyone might have different answers. And I think it's important to see their perspectives and understand and just realize how different we all are and just how different we all think. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation and reflecting with me. Understanding gender as a social construction doesn't erase identity, it expands our understanding of it. We get to see that gender isn't fixed, it's fluid, evolving, and powerful. And because it's made by society, it can also be changed by society. So, let me leave you with one final question. What would our world look like if we stopped treating gender as a rule book and started seeing it as a spectrum of possibilities? Thank you guys for listening and have a great night.